Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the webinar on power market coupling. Before I begin, I want to clarify one thing. A question was raised today that the link of the webinar was sent by IEX. So I want to make it clear that IEX has nothing to do with the organizing of this webinar. IEX has been providing us this WebEx service for last many years, and all our webinars are held on the Think WebEx links provided by IEX, but they have nothing to do with the organization, or we hold independent view, and we are not influenced by any organization, and that we give equal opportunity to all views on our forum. So welcome again, and I'll begin the webinar today. You see, Section 66 of the Electricity Act 2003 provides that the appropriate commission shall endeavor to promote the development of a market, including trading in power, in such a manner as specified, and shall be guided by the National Electricity Policy. A major step was taken by CERC in the year 2007 when it specified the guidelines for grant of permission for setting up an operation of power exchange. The Commission felt that the policy framework should make room for establishment of more than one power exchange at the national level, and also have the provision for having second-tier power exchange at the regional or state level. The general approach of the Commission was towards development of the power market with minimal regulations and to allow operational freedom to power exchanges with an overall framework to be provided by the Commission. Commission was of the view the regulations should be restricted to requirements of essential for preventing derailment, accidents, and collision. It was felt that private entrepreneurship would be allowed to play its role, and the Commission would keep away from governance of power exchange, which would be required to add value and provide quality service to the customers. While specifying the Power Market Regulation 2010, CERC continued with the same approach of principle-based regulation and managed the macro picture with adequate safeguards and leave micromanagement to participants to provide enough space for innovation by markets. Two power exchanges, PXIL and IEX, were initially established in the year 2008, and a third exchange, HPX, was also established in the year 2022. However, bulk more than 99.8% of the transaction in DAM and RTM markets continued to be carried out only on one exchange. The power exchanges have played a very important role in development of the short-term collective markets, implementation of dispute-free clearing and settlement, and development of new and innovative and market products. The power exchanges also played their role in providing support to DISCOMs in optimizing their power procurement through short-term market. This resulted in significant market participation in DAM and RTM segments of the market. CERC notified the Power Market Regulation 2021, which had a provision of market coupling of DAM and RTM and other markets as specified by the Commission. The market coupling operator will be responsible for operation and management of the market coupling. These provisions were to come into effect when decided by the Commission in accordance with the regulation to be specified separately. Till then, the price discovery function was required to be continued with the respective power exchanges. The stated objectives of the power market coupling are discovery of uniform market clearing price for DAM and RTM and other markets. And number two, optimal use of the transmission infrastructure. Number three, maximization of economic surplus. And CERC, again by order in 6th February 2024, directed Grid India to implement a shadow pilot basis coupling of RTM with SCED and DAM, and within 4 months give their report and display it on their website. Grid India submitted two feedback reports, one in January and other one in June 2025 to CERC. However, these feedback reports were not put in the public domain, and CRC, without giving any notice to the stakeholders, passed the order on 23rd July 2025, deciding coupling of DAM of 3 power exchanges by January 2026. The power exchanges were to act as MCO on rotational basis, what you call round robin basis, with Grid India as the 4th MCO for backup and audit purposes. It was decided by CRC that coupling of RTM will be considered later on after gaining operational experience of the coupling of the day-ahead market. IEF challenged the order of July 25 of CRC directing operationalization of the market coupling before appellate tribunal. The tribunal, by judgment on 13th February 26, declined to intervene in the order of the CRC and disposed of the matter appeal with some directions. APTEL, as you know, does not have powers to examine the validity of the regulations. That can be done by the courts, High Court or Supreme Court. Subsequent to the APTEL judgment, Grid India has put up the feedback reports of January 25 and June 25 on market coupling on shadow pilot basis on its website. In January 25 report, the exercise was conducted for the period 1st April 22 to 31st March 24 for a period of 28 months. It indicates that 99.995% of the total RTM welfare was discovered at IEX and 99.818% of the total percentage of the total DAM welfare was discovered at IEX. There was marginal improvement in welfare due to coupling, which was 0.042% for RTM and 0.05% for DAM compared to the uncoupled business as usual scenario. Further, there are very few instances in the collective market segments when any volume is lost owing to congestion. The congestion remained at a level of around 0.1% in the year 23-24. Therefore, for more than 99.9% of the time, there was no congestion and single price was discovered across the regions pan-India. June 25 study report of Grid India for the period December 24 to March 25, a period of 4 months, indicates that with coupling of DAM, there is increase in total market clearing volume of 52 million units, which is 0.22% of the total, and there is total increase in welfare of 389 million rupees, which is 0.3%. Coupling of RTM for 4 months period indicates increase in market clearing volume of 1.5 million units, which is 0.012%, and total increase in welfare of 7.2 million, that is 0.01%. CRC has now prior published the draft CRC Power Market Second Amendment regulations for obtaining the suggestions and objections of the stakeholders. The salient features of the amendment are: in the interest of probity and transparency in market operation, the Commission has decided to designate Grid India as market coupling operator. The Commission feels that this will improve the regulatory oversight and reduce the need for frequent regulatory intervention. Grid India shall form a separate cell for discharging the functions of MCO. Price discovery shall be done by MCO from such date as decided by the Commission. The market coupling will apply to DAM, RTM, and any other markets that the CRC decides in future. The role of the power exchanges will be to collect the buy and sell bids in uniform formats, and all anonymous and validated bids shall be transmitted by the power exchanges to MCO, and MCO shall aggregate the bids received from the power exchanges and carry out the price discovery. Grid India shall formulate the market coupling procedure with due approval of the CRC within 6 months of the issue of this regulations, and the procedure shall also include how the settlement will take place and the charges that MCO Grid India will charge from the beneficiaries. On implementation of market coupling, the role of power exchanges will be reduced to bid collection and transmission of data to MCO, and after that, financial settlement according to the buy and sell bid selected by the MCO after the price discovery. There will be financial transaction between the two power exchanges because the financial transaction at one exchange will now not totally balance 100%. So there will be financial transactions between the exchanges and in the proposed arrangement, we feel there is no value addition by the power exchanges. The collection of bid could as well be done by the Grid India, and the separate agency could be designated for financial clearing and settlement, which will avoid inter-power exchanges financial transactions involving number of power exchanges. In the above background, we will begin the dialogue on the subject, whether the market coupling will help in enlarging the power market and will be in the interest of the efficient operation of the power market, and if so, whether the proposed arrangement of bid collection and clearing and settlement through numerous power exchanges can be replaced by some better arrangement. We have today three eminent speakers: Mr. R.P. Singh, former chairperson UPERC, Mr. Balwant Joshi, Managing Director, EDEM Infrastructure, and Mr. S.R. Narasimhan, former CMD Grid India. May I now request Mr. R.V. Shahi, President IEF, to address the gathering.
Thank you, Rakesh. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think Mr. Rakesh Nath, who is the chairman of the regulatory vertical in the India Energy Forum, has provided an elaborate background of this subject, which has been structured very well chronologically. Let me take a few minutes in that chronology. How did we arrive at the very idea of exchange in India? Much before this regulatory commission got into this or the electricity policy got into this. We had a meeting of the energy secretary. Some presentations were made by various consultants in the ministry, and the idea was floated that there could be an element of exchange operation for short-term trading. And at that time, most of the secretaries, I can say, energy secretaries of the states were somewhat surprised that the stage at which the sector was, whether that will work. I mean, they were a bit surprised that this subject we are trying to bring in and this element we are trying to bring in. And that followed a decision that we should facilitate an elaborate visit to various countries where exchange operation is successful. And that is how a team went and they gave a report. We had another round of discussion. And then it was felt that, yes, this is something which we could definitely, as a futuristic outlook of the sector, could provide. Now, where does the exchange come in picture in overall legislative and policy framework? The only place that exchange has come, and where does the regulatory commission come in this trading business? Because one of the functions of regulatory commission, which the regulatory commission has relied upon, the section 66 of the Act, which provides that the regulatory commission would promote the development of market, including trading in power in such a manner as may be specified and shall be guided by the national electricity policy. So this is the power which the regulatory commission draws in the development of market. And this is the section which was later used when the license was given to the first India Energy Exchange. Now, this section of Electricity Act 66 directs you to the electricity policy. And it is there where we find, because when we discuss these things, then we found that, yes, we should provide some strength to this particular possibility in our legislative and policy framework, which will legitimize this element of a player in the electricity market development. And it is in National Electricity Policy, Section 5.7, that we evolved, 5.7F, where I was trying to find out where this power exchange came into being. Enabling regulation for inter and intrastate trading, and also regulations on power exchange shall be notified by the appropriate commissions within 6 months. It is here where this power exchange has come into it. But mind you, this provision, that is subsection 5, subsection F, that has come under 5.7.1 under the overall heading of competition. Overall heading of competition. Why I'm stressing this point, that even among exchange operations, it was rightly felt by the commission later on that instead of one exchange, we should have more exchanges. And that is how we had second exchange, then we had third exchange as a part of competition. The whole birth of this particular idea of power exchange comes from the electricity policy, which drives its strength from the legislation, which I have tried to mention to you, Section 66 and 5.7 of the electricity policy. Section 66 takes you to the electricity policy. Otherwise, there is no power. Then comes the question of how does it happen that we change the whole provisions of the license. When the license was granted, I went through that whole license proceedings of the Regulatory Commission. And this is very elaborate on consideration of all facts or on consideration of all matters. The whole expectation from the exchange operations, all operations from the licensee, that they should develop technology, they should see that things are done in a proper manner, whole range. They should explore various possibilities to see that the interest of competition, interest of the trading is protected. So therefore, whole range of expectation. And that set the trend for exchange operation. I may also mention that in the early days of this exchange, I was worried because we were quite clear that we should give a trial to this, as I told you, the historical background. Therefore, some of us, Rakesh is also there, Anil Sardana was there, Mr. Bajaj was in the appellate tribunal member, and Mr. MNRE Secretary Subramaniam, later on Power Grid Chairman. We formed a group to provide and to pressurize and persuade the India Energy Exchange that it should serve the electricity distribution companies who are totally unaware of this subject. They can optimize their procurement. They should do training. They should give all assistance. They should put their people to sit by the side of their commercial people. Besides, also spending enough money on the technology side of it so that a proper thing. In the early days, when the exchange happened, the price was higher than the trading price, and we were worried, very high. And we were worried that whether these exchange operations will be accepted by the consumers at large and the country at large. But soon, based on various technological changes that they did in their systems, this came. So year after year, we are trying to say the average price in trading and average price in exchange, whether it is matching or it is, and it always proved more and more effective. So there is a history. Exchange operation is not that you direct from this gentleman to do or that gentleman to do. So it has a history of this, and that is how it proceeded. Now let us see to what extent the Regulatory Commission is within its right to direct the Grid India to do this. And then I went into last 2 days, I did some reading on the legislation with which we were so closely associated in the time of formulation. And I was a bit concerned whether they are entitled to ask this Grid India to do this. Absolutely, in the Electricity Act, it is quite clearly said that National Load Dispatch Center will not engage in the business of trading. This is trading. Power exchange is a trading business. And under Section 14, it is to be given license like a trader. It has been given a license. And in the business of this trading, national grid operator will not indulge, will not engage. So the first question that comes is whether this particular action of regulatory commission is according to law okay or not okay. That has to be, I mean, in letter and in spirit, definitely in spirit, I am quite clear that they are not within their right to get into this at all, National Law Dispatch Center. They were structured in the whole configuration of Power Grid Corporation of India as an element to only supervise, to regulate, to operations of the system. And there are enough loose ends here and there which people keep finding solutions to. They are struggling. And to burden them with this one aspect of the trading, to fix the price. Fixing the price is an important element of this trading activity. And fixing the price cannot be given to this body. This body has to be totally independent, the system operator. So I think that is the first question, that it does not stand to logic according to the law to entrust, and whether CERC is within its right to entrust this responsibility and to pass on this responsibility to the regulatory commission. That is a very important point that we must. Secondly, while we are trying to talk in the country, or for that matter, not only in power, in all other sectors, there should be competition in the interest of consumers. And I might tell you that my own experience of ever since these exchanges have come, we have been trying to see that these people serve the consumers, train the consumers, serve the consumers, try to optimize their procurement cost. And it is there where one exchange to another exchange to third exchange, there should be a degree of competition to provide goods, better service. So if the very essence of it you are trying to take away and putting into central body and over centralize this is the paradox of competition, the benefit of competition to consumers. As it is, regulatory process as a whole has not been able to go far away on providing competition. Open access is a problem, cross subsidy charge is a problem, whole lot of things to do. So this is another important thing, that is it in the spirit of competition to over centralize? Somebody said that in the political system there was a talk that uniform price, and I was ridiculing. When everything is non-uniform in power, every power project has a different price, transmission systems have different price than they aggregate. Where is the question of this being uniform? Where is the question of uniform? Hydro has a different price, gas is a different price, nuclear will have a different price, solar has a different price. Within solar, there are different prices. So I think it is a ridiculous expectation of uniform price. Another point, that what are we trying to get into? This is a small fraction in overall composition of the market, of the power supply. Maybe much less than 10%, maybe between 5-7%, something like that. That is all that is there. And we are engaging ourselves in this discussion and contradicting in terms of reducing the competition. I would like these three exchanges to go. Can we say all banks should have one rate? Everybody should have one rate? I mean, if we have competition, consumers get a benefit of competition. Then I got hold of what the paper just now was mentioned about by Rakesh, that when experiment was done, trial was done, the conclusion of POSOCO at that time, which is Grid India today, was there is a marginal 0.009 or some percent or something like that difference. And why are we getting into this for this purpose? Lastly, and very importantly, that when you create institutions and institutions go into capital market, in the share market, this type of decision, this type of thought, we cannot kill the institution which we create to serve the people. And this type of even discussion has to be very well structured, well thought of, and kept secret. And last point I would like to make, that about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, there was a meeting of the advisory committee. I was on the advisory committee. In the beginning, there were different views, different points. When these things were discussed, the consensus was that this was not the time to introduce this. Chairman Central City Authority was there. Jyoti Arora was there, who did have a view later on. But when we all discussed various aspects, then we all came to the same conclusion. A consensus in that advisory committee was that this is not the time to get into this controversial subject. In that advisory committee, both the exchanges, India Energy Exchange, third exchange was not active at that time perhaps, India Energy Exchange and the other Power Exchange, both the MDs were asked to give their views. I asked a question to addressed to the Power Exchange. Is there any provision in the license that discriminates one exchange against the other? And he had no answer. There's no. And I said that if that is so, then that should be changed. Both should have this level playing field. In that, by virtue of your quality of service, by virtue of your serving the customers, by the virtue of training them, by the virtue of enabling their commercial decision making in a manner that they optimize their procurement of power cost, if one exchange is doing better than the other exchange, that leave it to the judgment of the customers, buyers and sellers. Why are you superimposing a uniform type of thing? And there was no answer to this in that thing, that if there is any discriminatory provision which discriminates one exchange against the other, that provision needs to be looked into. So I think these are the thoughts which we have to see. But in any case, I would humbly submit that we have much larger issue. Regulatory process as a whole, including the state regulatory commissions, have challenges in their states. Let us put our heads on that rather than get into these controversial subjects, which a question is come whether it is legal, in letter, in spirit, if not in letter, in spirit, whether it is okay for the National Road Dispatch Center, which has other responsibilities, and onerous responsibility. And with the solar coming up, even more onerous responsibility. Should we indulge into this type of controversial issues or concentrate our efforts, put our efforts on other issues? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shai Saab, for giving the historical background and raising some very important points. Today we have about 128 participants in the webinar, which shows the interest in the subject. May I now request the next speaker, Mr. R.P. Singh. Mr. R.P. Singh is former chairperson of UPERC. He has been writing very interesting blogs on various important issues facing the power sector. Recently, he has also written a book on energy transition. Mr. R.P. Singh.
Thank you. With your permission, I'd like to use a PowerPoint to convey my views and share.
Sure.
I hope this can be seen by all.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, it's good.
So today I'm going to talk about the market coupling of power, which is being proposed by the CERC. And I must thank IE for giving me this opportunity on this very important and one of the most contested regulatory initiatives in the power sector in recent years. If we really see it has been already pointed out that we have three exchanges and the dominant IEX is the dominant one with more than 99% share. So I'll not spend much time. But the depth of the market is very critical for us to understand. The day-ahead market as a percent of total electricity is less than 4%. It's about 3.4% only. And RTM last year was about 2.98%, about 54 billion units. And the short-term market combined with other trades, etc., OTC and others is 13%, and rest all are long-term PPA based. So with this is the power exchange landscape in we are trying to implement the market coupling. Actually, it is not a market coupling because India is a unified market, and the concept has been borrowed from the European areas where you have got the different regions which are coupled. So What we are actually proposing to do is the exchange coupling rather than, but calling it a market coupling. The CERC has on 17th April notified the draft second amendment and highlighted certain new draft regulations. And now it proposes to designate Grid India as the sole permanent market coupling operator, replacing the earlier round robin model. And Regulation 39, draft Regulation 39 now defines the scope that this market coupling will be for DAM and RTM, and with a staged notification date that will be flexibility in implementing in a staggered manner. It has also proposed a new Regulation 39A and 39B, establishing the architecture that there will be uniform bid format and secure encrypted transmission to the market coupling operator by the exchanges. And the price discovery will be on the principle of maximizing economic surplus, and there will be market splitting for congested corridors. It also proposes new Regulation 39C to mandate a market coupling procedure, which will be a detailed operational rule book that Grid India must formulate within 6 months. And the Commission will approve that procedure. This is one of the key factors of the whole process. It means that algorithm to be used, the encryption protocols, the settlement procedures, and contingency rules will be spelled out before the market coupling goes live. There is also a new rule 39D, which has been extended to the existing exchange obligation. That means the Grid India shall have the same IT infrastructure, cyber security protocols and algorithm, etc. Everything they have to do as per the exchange. So the MCO will function. The power coupling procedure will define the roles and responsibilities, operational sequencing, that what will be carried out in what step, bid format encryption, price discovery algorithm, and settlement clearing, etc. These functions are in the draft regulations. And the shadow pilot has already been discussed by Mr. Nath, so I'll not go much in detail about that. But objective has to be maximization of welfare gain and splitting of the market in the congestion side. And the economic gains in the shadow pilot has been very minuscule. There is also an issue of ignoring the earlier 29 months pilot and relying on only 4 months pilot without giving any specific reason by the Commission. That is a point which we need to consider. So, but overall, why the welfare gains are so small? It's simple, because the market depth is very shallow. There's hardly any competition. The market coupling needs a deep competitive market with multiple active exchanges. And in Indian context, when one exchange holds around 99% of the market, the aggregate bid curve from coupling is nearly identical to that exchange's own bid curve. So there is no meaningful difference and hardly any arbitrage that will appear. The gains will be mathematically, it will be moving towards the zero value. And second point is that coupling needs a large active traded short-term market, which is not there. As I have already pointed out, the DAM is less than 4% and RTM is less than 3%. So even if we do market coupling, the welfare gains are not going to be very significant. Now, with the draft regulation, there are certain concerns which have emerged. Mr. Sahi has eloquently pointed out, and in fact, I have been writing in my blogs that Grid India has got some conflict of interest under Section 27(2). However, I differ from Mr. Sahi on one point, that the conflict of interest may be technically permissible because MCO will not be buying or selling electricity, because trading means you buy and sell the electricity. So MCO will not be doing that. But if we take in the spirit, the form of a spirit, there are certain conflicts, because the Grid India will receive all the pre-cleared bid data, buy bid, sell bid, price, volume, etc., before the market clearing. And this is the most commercially sensitive information for the power sector. And Grid India also procures ancillary services, which is after the great closure of the dam. So that means Grid India as a procurer is privy to information, undisclosed security information, that what is happening in the market, and it is going to buy that ancillary services from that. So that is a serious conflict of interest, and merely creating an MCO, internal MCO sale, will not solve the organizational purpose. So there's conflict of interest that has to be seen. The second flaw which I could identify was that in the APTEL's order of February 13, it was directed by APTEL that to keep away the regulatory making exercise on market coupling from the officers who were named in the SEBI's order. Unfortunately, in the draft regulation, no such disclosure has been made or done by CERC. So it's not only non-compliance, but also it is important from the point of view of regulatory trust, because it is foundational. They might have not engaged them, but they also need to disclose that they have not done. So this is one point that has to be also kept in mind, because transparency, proactive transparency, would make the whole process legitimate and acceptable. Then the third case is that economic case has not been made transparently. The gains are marginal, welfare gains are insignificant. And another important point is that the regulation mandates that PMCP will be approved by the Commission. But it is completely silent whether the draft PMCP will be published for public comments before their approval or not. Because if the stakeholders are not consulted in the whole procedural formalities done by MCO, then that means it is lacking transparency, and one irregularity which was there in the earlier order will be replaced by another irregularity. Concern 5 on the market depth precondition has been already highlighted, and independent audit is necessary for meaningful coupling. Coupling has not been mentioned, and operational procedure, etc., has also been not made. Now, one more aspect which is missing is the cost benefit analysis, because this whole operation will require some capex and opex which has to be met. The regulation provides for recovery of the cost, but how the cost will be recovered, that is not clearly defined. And if we see, roughly about 40-50 crore will be capex required, and about 18 to 32 crores will be on the opex which will be required. It is silent on the cap recovery. There is no methodology which is mentioned, whether it will be cost plus or volume linkage, or it will be flat fee, whether the exchange pass on MCO charges to the market participant, whether the MCO charges are within or above the 2 paisa limit. So, or whether there will be a mechanism of annual true up and refund mechanism. This equally important because CERC recently in December 2025 has floated, the staff paper has been floated for reduction of the exchange fee from 2 paisa to 1.5 paisa per unit. So on one hand, we are talking about reducing the fee, but if MCO will be allowed to charge fee, then let us see how much fee they can charge. So DAM volume is about 65 billion units, RTM volume is about 55 billion units. So roughly 120 billion units. And even if we consider 5 paisa per unit, so roughly 60 crore will be allowed to be recovered, which is more than the current welfare gain. So the cost benefit has to be seen in the whole context, which is missing in this exercise. So this is the summary aspect of whole proposal. MCO model has been set right. Conflict of interest has not been set right. Implementation timeline they have notified, but the procedure is still doubtful. The algorithm audit provision has been made. The stakeholder notification is for the regulation, but not for the PMCP. SEBI compliance is missing, economic justification is missing, market depth is missing, and implementation date uncertainty is still not there. So, how to correct it? For conflict of interest, they should seek some legal opinion about whether the Grid India as MCO can function as market coupling operator subject to section 27.2 or not. And CERC should also in their final regulation should confirm that the APTEL order on recusal of the concerned staff is there. Publish full shadow and pilot data set with cost benefit analysis. Introduce a public consultation process for PMCP, and also ensure that market deepening exercise is done before the coupling. So unless until these are done, there is not a meaningful correction. It is an incomplete reform. Now, I have added two more parts to my whole presentation to give a flavor of better understanding. And the second part, I'll try to briefly compare it, how the market coupling is done in primarily the European region, which from where this whole idea has been considered. So in European market, basically they have a concept of single day ahead coupling, and they have a different. There are 5 key dimensions of regulation in the European region: the market structure, MCO governance, algorithm design, congestion management, and regulatory oversight. So Europeans, their market is basically on the bidding zone base or regions through coordinated cross-border transmission of capacity allocation and price discovery. Whereas in India, the current proposal is essentially coupling of power exchanges operating within a single national grid and single regulatory jurisdiction. While the concept is sound, but currently appears to be premature because of death and other issues which I'll just highlight. The market structure is totally different. In European regions, the DAM is penetration region-wise varies from 30 to 60%, and in India is less than 4 to 3%. I have wrongly mentioned it is 3% here. And there are more than 10 exchanges with genuine competition which will be participating. But in India, there are 3 exchanges, only one is dominant one. No single exchange dominates, but in India, we have a dominant exchange. Pre-coupling prices spread were real and meaningful, and coupling where welfare gains were real and meaningful, but in India, there's not there. Bilateral contracts is a minority, but in India, bilateral contracts are majority. The dimension 2 is about who runs the market coupling in Europe. So it's basically in Europe, they follow the model of competitive neutrality, but what we are proposing is a centralized concentration. So in the single day ahead coupling, the functions of price discovery, congestion declaration, or ancillary procurement and pre-clearing data is all divided between different agencies. Like, for example, price discovery is done by PCR consortium of power exchanges, which is jointly owned, and no system operator is involved. Congestion declaration is done by TSO, which is separate from MCO and exchanges. Ancillary procurement is TSO largely separate, no access to pre-clearing data. And pre-clearing bid data is firewalled and shared between platforms, and there's no human readable access before clearing. But in India, all the four functions is being proposed to be done by a single entity, that is Grid India. So this creates certain vulnerability. So if we have pre-clearing bid data, and all these functions with the MCO, then there are certain vulnerability and risks which will be. I'll come to them point by point. Let's see the algorithm comparison. Algorithm in European region, they use euphemia, and in India is yet to be publicly notified. The European algorithm is multi-party governed and continuously monitored. But India draft regulation, it has not been formulated yet. It has not been shared with the public for scrutiny, etc. Although it provides audit before go live and every 2 years thereafter, but it doesn't have any continuous monitoring mandate between audit, which is a serious flaw, because there are parameter drifts which can happen between the audit period. I'll explain in next following slides what are these nuances. So our algorithm framework is also quite different and not designed as per the European system. The congestion management is again different. India's specific risk is that Grid India declares the interregional corridor congestion and uses a separate. So what the discretion may create certain market intervention. Say, for example, illustrative price, say if you create a region, then the prices of region where market prices were different before congestion will alter after congestion. So is the discretion of the TSO, the system market coupling operator, which is Grid India, which is also the NLDC, to decide whether to have 80% or 90% as the congestion level. Then surveillance mechanism in European region is there is a independent remit, which is regulation on wholesale energy market integrity and transparency, which does that, and it covers every aspect: insider trading, market manipulation, false information disclosure, etc., etc. And then the Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators, like ASA is like what we have here in CERC, and each and every aspect is under regulatory surveillance. But in Indian context, the CERC regulates the power market, SEBI regulates electricity derivative. There is no formal coordination protocol. The second risk is that the pre-clearing MCO bid data is not classified as unpublished price sensitive information under SEBI, because this is the most critical thing, and there are different protocols to be followed for UPSI, which is not there. Then these points I have already stated, so I'll not repeat that. So if we compare, there are issues of deficiency in market depth, MCO governance, algorithm transparency, algorithm change coverage, congestion input separation, pre-clearing data, regulatory surveillance, and audit is provided. Staged implementation is allowed. Stakeholders consultation is only for regulation, not for PMC. So these are the governance gap which remains. 5, structural deficit. There's no separation of Grid India 4 functions. Algorithm not public documented is a black box risk. Pre-clearing data not classified as UPSI, and no formal SEBI SERC coordination protocol. PMC process not open to public consultation. So how we can set right before PNCP is finalized? SEBI and CERC should have some sort of understanding to notify this pre-clearing data as UPSI, and CERC should do all these steps. Then it will perhaps meet the deficit or governance gaps which are existing there. Now, third part of my slide is related to basically why market coupling is being done. Is it being done only because of welfare, or there are certain concerns also related to the operations of the exchange? Informally, in some discussions, it was one of, I'll not name, but it was shared that there are instances of certain riggings in the price discovery, which is taking place somewhere in the exchanges, etc. So my third part is briefly on that, how market coupling will, impact or affect that concern. So market rigging analysis is what I'm calling it, and it will deal with how the risks which were there in the exchange operations earlier, the rigging risks, how they are going to continue or vanish or change. So the finding is that market coupling, while it doesn't create manipulation, but it will inherit it. So whatever rigging possibilities were there, they will continue to be there. I have categorized them into three categories. First is carried forward. That means whatever there was risk which was prevailing in the exchanges, that will remain. The second category is which will be carried forward but amplified. That means it will increase in the magnitude. And third is the new risk which will be created. So first is the bid manipulation, which is existing on exchanges today, unchanged by coupling. So it will not go away. Then regulatory leak, which has already happened in the SEBI instance cases, that may remain. Then mark-to-market timing attack. I'll just come and explain what this is with reference to DAM prices, whether coupled or not, will remain. The what will be amplified will be congestion gaming, and that means the same entity, NLDC, which declares what level of congestion and then splits the market, will affect the market clearing price, will remain and amplified. The algorithm parameter drift is one of the most technical and complex risks, which remains with the algorithm and which is hardly discussed in public domain. That gets amplified, and algorithm inside centralization risk will also remain. I'll explain each and every one in one slide each. And then seventh is the new risk which will be created by coupling is pre-clearing data concentration. That means single entity will see all the data of all the three exchanges, and this will be the unique type of risk which has got a very, very high impact on the whole integrity of the process. So I think the PMCP must address these three categories so that it remains a transparent and an integrity-based system. So let us try to understand how the things will happen. These are uncodified timelines. That means, say, bid closure for DAM takes place at 12, and the bid transmission has to be done by whatever time the PMCP does. And then in the next whatever time, say 15, 20 minutes or 25 minutes, MCO does the computation and runs the MCP engine and clearing coupling engine and discovers the price, and then result is published. In this window, MCO must do bid aggregation, congestion handling, optimization, market splitting, and market clearing price computation. So these are the activities which has to be taken place. And for RTM, it will be further reduced. So when you run the solver, the runtime solver, the coupling engine, it must discover the whole price within a stipulated time frame. So that is the key, which I'm going to explain later how it is going to affect. So solver duration. So solver duration is the time for which you run the coupling engine. So it depends upon the data, the volume of data, and if you want to have a higher level of coupling accuracy, then you run it for a longer duration. So this, say you run for 30 seconds, then you'll have a relatively better solution which will come out. But if you reduce it to 5 seconds, then the deterministic method, that means the error chances will remain high. So you'll get a suboptimal clearing price. So MCO has got control. Although you will say that algorithm is hashed into the server and nobody can change it, but nobody can, it is auditable within a 2 years period, etc., etc. But the issue is runtime environment. The program is hashed onto the server, so nobody can touch it. Only it is done through audit, that if you change the log, etc., verify. But runtime environment depends upon the machine which is not fixed by the server. So you run the duration. If during the lean market period, the number of bids will be less, in the highly peak period market, the number of bids will be higher. So if the MCO changes that duration, the outcome will be different. If you run it for shorter period, it will be helpful to the dominant exchange, like that. So this is one key which can be easily done by the MCO if it is not covered under the risk mitigation measure. Then, as I have mentioned, there are 7 attack vectors by which the rigging can be done. Bid manipulation method, which is already existing. Algorithm insider leak, that means the MCO cell officers can share that how the program is going to work out the market clearing price, what are the constraints, what are the methods, etc., etc. If it is not put in the public domain, it can be shared by the MCO cell officers. Then pre-clearing data leak, that the MCO cell officers will have access to all bids of all 3 exchanges, which is not notified at UPSI. So that whoever has got access can do that. Mind you, the SEBI thing happened once. This can happen with each and every clearing. Timing and latency attack is another thing. When your time and stamping is not done properly with the bid, or for some reason or other, one of the exchanges, it does not send its data to the MCO on some technical pretest or etc., etc., and he has got access to other information which is shared by other exchanges for that time. So that has to be covered. Congestion gaming, I have already mentioned, and algorithm parameter drift and regulatory notification drift. These are the 7 attack vectors. Bid manipulation, I have mentioned. The generator in a market, say 950 is the demand, and G1, G2, G3, G4 are the generator. So here the marginal generator, he knows that he is the marginal one. He can easily enhance his bid from 5 to 545, and then he can make every time block certain additional money. this is only for the energy part, but the multiplier effect comes from the derivative part, because although in the final settlement of derivative you have weighted average of the all traded price, but on the daily side basis it is mark to market risk, so it will amplify through the derivative market. In the mark to market, whatever is the lot size which is being traded, that will impact the lot size. So this is one of the risk which is there. The second is algorithm risks, insider link, that I have already stated. Safeguard is required that publicly documented algorithm should be put in public place, and independent audit by ring-fence auditor with 2 years energy market cooling off. That means whoever is doing the audit should not be allowed to do any sort of trading or access to the energy market. It should be cryptographically signed version, and any changes should trigger re-audit and monthly review of all access logs. So these safeguards are necessary. Unless until these safeguards are done, it will be critical. Then pre-clearing data leaks, I have already stated that it should be formally classified as undisclosed price sensitive information in the SEBI framework, and log etc. should be monitored. Timing and latency attack is, I just mentioned that if one exchange on some pretext or other delays transmission of his data by some couple of minutes, he has got access to others' data during that period. Congestion gaming by NLDC will affect the price with the splitting and without splitting. For that, the safeguard required is, that means the grid capacity input has to be independently verified. Should not be solely at the NLDC discretion. We need to have some sort of committee which does this congestion for the whole clearing business. And there has to be separate governance protocol between NLDC and NCL function within the grid India. And unless we compartmentalize these activities, the risk will get concentrated. Algorithm parameter drift is, as I mentioned, one example I have already given, that you change the run engine duration, coupling engine duration from say 30 seconds to 10 seconds. It will give a different output. So that, and this 2-year audit is a very long duration. Anyone can do anything within that 2-year period, and it will not get reflected, because it's like if you are cooking something and recipe is said, you have a recipe which you have developed and put it in the lock and key, but the cook, he has got access to the oven, he can set the temperature, so the whole dish will come out to be different. This is similar exercise. The runtime environment of the system is still used by the operator, even if you have an algorithm which is standard. Regulatory notification leak is the SEBI case that is already there. So why this is happening? Because all 4 functions, why this may happen is because all the 4 functions will be with one direction, and these are the visibility and detectability I have tried to work out. This is low visibility, that means it's difficult to detect, and it has got high impact. Pre-clearing data is low to detect, but has got a high impact, very high daily, and detectability is low. Like that, these are the vectors which will affect the whole process. And the safeguard is for algorithm integrity, public documentation, cryptographically signed, auditors firm with 2 years cooling off, procedural hardware, timestamp, bid deadlines, and zero human override should be there. Congestion declaration should be by committee. with a auditable methodology. Any PMCP deviation should be reported to the commission, and PMCP to publish 30 days public comment before commission's approval. Data access control is declaration of UPSI, real-time access logging. MCO cell staff prohibited from trading electricity security tenure plus 6 months post. SEBI CRC formal MOU on sharing of protocol, regulatory process integrity, Grid India structural separation, IT system and credential, not a policy. That should be ensured. And market surveillance is the key thing that needs to be strengthened. Currently, there is no visible market surveillance which is happening for the power sector. So that needs to be strengthened. And there are mentions in the regulatory regulations, but how it is functioned, who are doing it, and what are its reports, they are not put in the public domain. So to conclude, I think market coupling may be required, but right now it is premature. In its present context, it can be rigged. So it need not to rig. So we need to have safeguards which will make it acceptable for everyone. So with this, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any question, comment, subject to the timeline of moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for a very, very elaborate presentation. I think it covered practically everything. All risk mitigation, you have covered everything. Thank you so much. May I now request Mr. Balwant Joshi? May I request Mr. Joshi to be little brief because we have already running out of time.
10 minutes, I suppose.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot, Shahi sir, Rakeshnath sir, Mr. R.P. Singh sir, and entire India Energy Forum community. Power coupling is, as we can see from the initial remarks of Rakeshnath sir and Shahi sir, and then subsequently from R.P. Singh ji, it's a very emotive and little contentious issue. And also that is also can see from the number of people who are attending this particular webinar on a weekday, middle of the day. And so that's how it is. R.P. Singh sir has given a very, very detailed presentation. I will try to be as brief as possible and try to restrict myself to some issues which have not been covered, or even if they are covered, I will try to be brief on those issues. So one of the first thing is that what is the objective of the market coupling? And there were three main reasons cited by CRC: discovery of unified market selling price, optimal use of transmission infrastructure, and maximization of economic surplus. And we have seen the report published by Grid India and then subsequent analysis by many people. And we also know the current market situation where IEX is a very dominant exchange or dominant platform in both the markets, that is a DAM and RTM. And as a result of that, the discovery of uniform market clearing price, it is obviously has to be very close to what IEX is doing. Same issue is with respect to the surplus, and it is no great surprise anyone who's doing analysis that economic surplus by way of market clearing price is minimal. Because if the 99% of the market is with one party, the other two parties or other two exchanges contributing to very little, economic surplus has to be aligned with the one of the exchanges or that particular exchange, and other two exchanges will have minimal surplus. And that is probably the reason to look at different options, in my view. Okay. But before getting into the other two options or why we should get into other option, the third reason which is cited by CRC, optimal use of transmission infrastructure. What we have seen is with the substantial increase in the regional, inter-regional capacity, there has not been market splitting for quite some time. There has been one uniform price that is getting cleared. And as a result of that, at least for the time being, optimal use of transmission infrastructure is not as relevant an issue as it should be. So moving to the moving to this particular issue of the economic surplus, why it is less? And one of the reason which was mentioned was the size of the DAM and RTM markets are 4% and 3% respectively. So total 7%. And there has been umpteen attempts to increase the market depth and they have failed. We have seen very nominal increase in the share of short-term market, which also includes DSM as well as bilateral markets or through traders market, as well as D2D market, and that has not crossed 12-13%. So are we going to be satisfied with that? How do we really increase the market depth? And if you are able to increase the market depth, so what should be the ultimate objective of the any response to the market? That is to provide or supply electricity to the consumer at a minimum price. And for that purpose, there has to be discovery of the price, which is the lowest possible price, which is viable for the generators or the suppliers to supply in the market, so that we are able to supply to all the consumers. That is that particular discovery of price and having the large market. So that should be the objective of any market-based reform. So I look at it at this particular reform, wherein the market coupling operator would come in from that market depth perspective. Okay. Would the market coupling operator coming in or coupling of the market happening with the three exchanges just collecting the bids and passing on those bids, curated bids, the transmission of those bids to the MCO would kind of cause any change in the market dynamics, so that there would be more interest in the state discoms to participate in the market, state generators to participate in the market, open access consumers to participate in the market. And I think the current approach to the analysis is inefficient or insufficient, not efficient, but insufficient to deal this particular issue. There are no instruments. There is no way that we have done that kind of analysis that if we change the market structure, where the state discoms would come in and would start participating more, or the state generators would start participating more. We know there are basic fundamental challenges with the state discom. They don't know what is going, or their instruments or the mechanisms available with them to do the day ahead forecasting are not robust enough, and as a result of that, they are not able to predict what is going to be the power requirement, and so they have been trying to be conservative. State gencos have got a long-term PPAs and long-term PPA related issues, and that's the reason they are not able to participate. Open access consumers, in theory, we have reduced it to 100 kilowatt, but which states where 100 kilowatt is allowed? So something different needs to be done to increase the market depth. Then only there would be more participation in the market. And then only we can talk about a social welfare being sufficient or insufficient for this particular market reform. The second point, I will come to the proposed models. The one model that is being talked about right now is the power exchange collating bids and power exchange transferring those bids to MCO, which is likely to be the Grid India. But there is another possibility. Like, when that is done, what is the role of exchanges? Just collecting the bids and transferring those bids to the MCO. Why that role can't be played by others also? Why do you need exchanges in between? So we are actually looking at a different market formations over here. The existing market, which is more from, as Shahi sir explained, some of the exchanges, how they were operating in Europe, one looked at it, we tried to adopt that model over here. So we tried to adopt a model which is a system operator separate from the market operator. So the exchanges were supposed to be separate than the system operator. Now with creating MCO, we are moving towards more American model, which is ISO RTO model, where the system operator is with the market operator. And there is one single market operator, which is operating in one single system. So this is the kind of model that we are moving in, while retaining the kind of a rudimentary or structure of a power exchanges in between. So I think we need to have a little bit more holistic approach to the market design, have a relook at the market design. What do we want to do that? The issue that we also see in the market today, we have got power exchanges, we have got traders, we have got now likely to have MCO. We also have something called deep portal. I don't know what is the legal exactly sanctity of that particular portal, but can that be merged into something else? Then we have got there is another one, that is the OTC operators. And on top of that, now we are talking about having capacity market and different other markets. So the market is becoming very, very complex and very, very difficult for even the experts or the people who are participating in the market to understand. We need to have a rethink on the entire power market design and see which are the entities which are redundant, which are not needed, and make it little bit structured power market. And then we would be able to implement we would be able to probably get more market into the actual market. Moving to what is going to be the impact on the existing exchanges? That if we implement the market coupling, what is going to be the impact on the? See, one thing is obvious. Both the exchanges or three exchanges would become simply the agents for collecting the bids and transmission of that data to MCO and then settlement of buyers and sellers. But I look at it in a little different way. Can we look at it as a UPI engine of energy? Wherein, there would be more power exchanges or more entities that would come and those would build on this particular UPI engine. Whether we would be able to implement dynamic pricing, at least for the larger set of consumers. We may be able to have apps in the electricity, which would be like Paytm, BharatPay, GPay, which would use this reference price in a better way so as to deliver the real social welfare to the consumer. What these exchanges or new entities will have to do is that the trading interface, we will have to have a better API quality, analytics, market integration. We may also have to look at some new market. Okay. So, but what would be the impact on the existing exchanges? If you just look at the data of the exchanges and their profitability, that's an immensely profitable business. If you see PAT margins of IEX, PXIL, and even the smallest and the latest exchange, which is HPX, are 64%, 59%, and 39%. If I notice it, I'm sure there are many players, private sector players, who would notice it. And once the entire layer of having to install price discovery engine and utilize that price discovery engine, associated IT infrastructure goes out, the profitability would also further increase. So that also would mean there will be a large number of smaller players who would be keen to get into the market. So Rakesh Nath sir mentioned in his opening remarks and is part of the background note also, there is a provision for state level and regional level exchanges coming into play. And I will not be surprised to see more exchanges coming into play just to make use of this particular opportunity and have this profitability, which is very, very attractive. What would be the impact on this existing exchanges? Their profitability would certainly come down. But I don't want to get into what would the dynamics between IEX versus PXIL and HPX, but that is something also which is very, very obvious. Moving to the implementation challenges, another 3-4 minutes for me. So the one issue, the Grid India had recommended that the MCO should be run in a round robin method, rotational MCO, responsibility with the exchanges. I find this is not a practical mechanism. A lot of the challenges with the MCO operations were very, very clearly explained by RP Singh sir. Now, we just have to think about using or trying to address those vulnerabilities with every exchange operator when he is doing the market coupling operation. No, just not possible. While in Europe, which is from where a lot of these MCO models have been taken, there are both models, which is a single MCO operation as well as the rotational MCO operation. But I think in India, it is better to...
Are you muted?
Sorry? So it is better to go with the single MCO model. Now I will come to the issue which, again, I talked about whether the Grid India can take the responsibility of MCO. I will go with RP Singh sir. In letter, doing the operation of MCO doesn't fall with the Electricity Act, but in the spirit, it certainly does. And Grid India trying to do the MCO business through the cell should be certainly no. There could be different structures that can be implemented. There could be another PSU under Ministry of Power. There could be another entity within the Grid India, or subsidiary of Grid India. So there are multiple options to ensure structural separation from system operator and the market operator, even though MCO is strictly speaking not a market operator. But the line between the two is very, very thin. Third, smaller issue, there would be transactions like, the power exchanges would be left with the job of settling the transaction between buyers and sellers. But there is also one more transaction that is between the power exchanges. See, because when it is done, the settlement across all the exchanges, there would be some payments which would happen from one power exchange to another power exchange. One is the issue of the protocol, issue of the, if we are going to think about a clearinghouse, that's a separate issue. But there would be a big issue about the transaction, between the transaction taxation. Okay, because whenever that money would pass on from one power exchange to another power exchange, there would be buy and sell transaction, there would be profitability, there would be income tax liability. All this market reform should not lead to the increase in the cost for the sector. Now, when we are talking about a market coupling, as I think RP Singh sir said, we are not talking about a coupling of the markets, we are talking about a coupling of the exchanges, right? So when we talk about a market, where either we talk about the two geographically separate markets, or within the geography, different types of markets, like, DAM market, RTM market, DAM. But here, we are not only talking about a DAM and RTM, we are also talking about DAM with SCUC, DAM RTM with SCED. We are also talking about integration with MBED. So, here we are again mixing up. One is the market structures, another is the regulated structures. So I think when we are trying to do that, the logic that is being given for the RTM and SCED integration is that would increase the depth of the market. Frankly, I don't think that is going to increase the depth of the market. You are pushing the regulated SCED market into the RTM market, and then you are saying the prices would come down. They are the two conceptually different issues, two conceptually different way of looking at markets and regulatory businesses. So I think we need far more discussion, conceptual, theoretical discussion on this issue before we get into it. So I just want to conclude over here. Market coupling, especially in the DAM, in order to get uniform market price, sounds to be a good idea. And then the reason is not, and why I'm saying this, I'm not looking at the social welfare, market volume increase from the lens of the existing market structure. I'm looking at the lens from the market structure that would evolve over a period of time. However, there are a lot of concerns with respect to the operation of the MCO within Grid India, how the Grid India will do the MCO, but not, and also the lot of vulnerabilities that RP Singh sir talked about. And lastly, this is the market reform which need to be looked at from the holistic point of view, and some more discussion has to happen on the entire market structure for the power in India. Thank you. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Balwan Joshi. Thanks for putting up very valuable points. May I now request Mr. S.R. Narasimhan to give his opinion on the issue?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me thank India Energy Forum at the outset for having me on this webinar on market coupling, a topic which has witnessed intense, heated discussion that even ChatGPT has started hallucinating against market coupling. But being the last speaker and a former system operator, let me take on the balancing role. I think the keynote address by Mr. RP Singh has covered very comprehensively, and that makes my job easy. Now, for starts, any optimization, whether if you do it over a larger geographical area or include more generators or increase the time period, it would always produce a better outcome. This is actually a no-brainer. And the advantage of market coupling has to be seen from that perspective. In fact, going back to 2013, this was a time when PXIL had a significant market share. They had in 2010-11, they had an 18% market share. and they filed a petition before CRC on corridor allocation. They were against pro rata. It was a time when congestion was very high. So they filed a petition, and the commission set up an expert group headed by Mr. Suni, and it had the members from academia and other experts. So that also recommended that market coupling would be the most optimal solution. Merging of bids and running, that would provide a far better outcome and enable better utilization of corridors. But unfortunately, the 2010 power market regulations didn't have any provision on market coupling, and it was decided that 10% preferential priority allocation would be given to PXIL on the congested corridor, and that's how the whole thing took off. And when the third exchange came, we went back to a pro rata method of corridor allocation. Now, market coupling is an important step, and unfortunately, the many issues highlighted by Grid India in its report, we haven't had much discussion on that, be it uniformity of bid structure in all exchanges, common rules for pre-processing of bids, market clearing algorithm. Even the algorithms are different. Two of them use mixed integer quadratic programming. One uses MILP. We did the exercise in Grid India on MILP like that, and the post-processing of the optimization results, IT infrastructure augmentation, and so on. All these issues which have been highlighted, actions need to be taken irrespective of the fact whether we have market coupling or not, right? And that itself will involve, very recently the commission has come out with a staff paper on reducing the gate closure time from 75 minutes to 50 minutes. So that would also involve significant actions, only 5-minute time for placement of RTM bids and all that. So all the stakeholders, be it Grid India, be it the exchanges, be it the market players, they all need to revamp their systems to for this shorter gate closure, and all the issues discussed in the report by Grid India, they have to be implemented whether we have market coupling or not. And the issues highlighted, they are not, very easy to handle. It involves a discussion amongst all power market experts, the academia. Europe also, when they went for euphemia common algorithm, it took quite some time. It was a very lot of discussions took place amongst the stakeholders. We had experts. And also, if you look at the Grid India report, we talked about 12 types of bids. With energy storage also coming, we will need newer and newer types of bids. So all those things must be discussed and finalized before we actually go for the final market coupling. Now, the next question, as one more thing, all that we have, Grid India had highlighted in its report of January 25, should ideally have come out of the audit and market surveillance, of the by the commission, but unfortunately, it had to come through this report. So the next question which I would cover is, one of timing. Out of many reforms required in the electricity market to complement reliability and economy, is market coupling the most important? Here it's important, we must respect the physical system, that is the country's grid and its reliability, which is crying out for urgent attention. There's so many signals through the market that this physical system is already giving, and which we are not taking it very seriously, and the pilot results are just one aspect of the whole thing. The three things basically which I would like to highlight. The first and foremost is resource adequacy. The system really gets stressed during heat wave conditions. We witnessed that in 2022, 2024, failure of southwest monsoon in 2023, and the recent April 26 heat wave. In the last week of April 26, 92% of the country's coal fleet was running at nearly full load from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. That's the kind of stress which was there on the system. And even in the exchanges, if you would see, just about 1000 megawatt was cleared. Even if you look at the RTM and DAM segments, just 1000 megawatt was cleared during those 12 hours. So it's really a stressful situation. And just 6 days later, what happened? On 1st May, we had nearly a fall of 35 gigawatt. The wind generation went up by 10 gigawatt. And we had to handle that through curtailing 25 gigawatt of ISTS connected wind and solar, 25 gigawatt. In one single time block, all this data is there in the public domain. Grid India, NLDC had to give 29 gigawatt of down reserves in a single time block. That's almost 15% of the all India generation, 30% of the ISTS connected generation. So which is a big sum, it's really a scary this thing. And, of course, these are all manual actions. Luckily, we had automatic generation control. We could get 2300 megawatt support. And only there was a fall in frequency to 49.7. Well, it's a real serious issue, and whole of 24-25, we had nearly 2.7 billion units of flexibility related curtailments in the Indian grid. And all the ISTS connected wind and solar, we had to curtail to this extent. And all this Grid India has been able to do based on an interim order of the commission. There was a SOS petition which had to be filed last year, and we got an interim order. And that's how this whole process has been going on. It's an interim solution. So flexibility is a real issue. Stressful situations are there, and actions by all stakeholders are required. Very recently, the commission came out with a staff paper on capacity market. So it's important that we focus our attention to really implementing the capacity market. We have the CA grid resource adequacy reports at national level, state level. How do we combine the two and start running the capacity auctions as quickly as possible? We need to devote more energy on that particular issue, And so the point really what I'm trying to make is a warehouse with no stocks or a warehouse with overflowing stocks and no buyers. Both are undesirable for any market, and frequent such episodes will lead to a fall in the DAM RTM volumes. And we have also seen that resource adequacy is the key issue. Why, despite a tertiary ancillary services market, which we implemented from June 23, we have hardly had any bids in the tertiary market, and resource adequacy is the issue. The second issue, which Mr. RP Singh has already covered well, is the depth of energy market. We all know that this double-sided auction, it constitutes just 5.7% of the energy generation in 24-25. And a good part of this low volume, unfortunately, there's not much discussion. The low volumes are also on account due to distortions, namely price cap, fragmentation of markets, overprotectionism of Section 62 generators, and so on. There's a host of things due to which all these low volumes are there. And fragmentation, like HP dam was formed, but you can't have a gas turbine, one for operating in normal dam and one for HP dam. It's the same gas turbine which has to operate and recover its revenues from the market. And the danger of all this is that in 23 and 24, these 2 years, we operated gas turbines actually through tertiary reserve ancillary services, right? And still the payments to those gas plants, they are pending. The 100% payment has not been made. Still some amount is pending. And the reason for that is manifold regulatory lag, refusal to pay by many of the beneficiaries and all that. So ideally this market distortion that should be reduced. And I think CFD is another talked about instrument through which the depth could be increased, but we haven't seen any CFD related contract. SECI has just recently floated a bid for 500 megawatt, 1500 megawatt hour BESS. NVVN has also done that, but the orders from the commission, they are still awaited. How do we make good any deficit in the CFD pool? That's still unanswered. So all these market distortion and CFD, if we introduce CFD and remove all the market distortions, the volumes should go up, and we need to devote more time, to this piece of market reform. There's a third issue which I would like to highlight, and that is congestion. In fact, all this past data, of minimal congestion on the interregional corridors, it has led to a sense of complacency, and if you look at, Grid India has been putting out on its website, each state, what is the import transfer capability. When we introduced General Network Access, GNA, we thought that transmission planning would be more futuristic, and the states would be able to import any quantum from any part of the country. But it's not happened that way. The GNA people try to have a lower GNA so that the transmission bills are reduced, whereas 22 states today, they have their GNA quantum crossing 70% of the transfer capability, which means congestion, the operator is seeing, but it's not visible to the market. If it has to be made visible to the market, we would need more bid areas in the exchange. But that exercise, unfortunately, it has been, there's a setback because you have this green hydrogen and the EU laws, that's really confusing the whole issue of implementing more bid areas. But this is important. The moment we create more bid areas in the exchange, the congestion at the intrastate level, that would be visible to the market, and all the augmentation, network augmentation that is really required, that would happen. So these three things are, we need to work on all the three: RA, resource adequacy, depth of the market, and third is congestion management. So once these three pieces come into action, automatically volumes would go up in the exchange, and the advantage of market coupling will be very much evident, and because we would have already taken care of the other things like uniform bid structure, algorithms, and other issues. Now, these three things, like there's one more important aspect, which is that the regulators, they have a great role, and sequencing of reforms. I go back to 2011 when the sharing regulations was notified. From 1st July 2011, the new transmission charge sharing regulation was implemented. And just 2 months before, there was one amendment in the terms and conditions of tariff, which allowed the utilities to raise a provisional bill, right? So there were a lot of petitions Power Grid had pending before CRC for tariff, for a lot of new assets which had come, but the tariff order was not issued. So because of this amendment, 95% billing, the commission issued 20 provisional orders on 30th June 2011. So when the first transmission bill was received by DICs, it had gone up by 34% because the annual transmission charges itself went up because of this regulatory order, and then people started blaming that the new sharing regulations has actually led to an increase in the transmission bill. So sequencing of reforms is also equally important. And we all know that resources are limited. All the measures which I mentioned, capacity market, CFDs, and third is congestion management. In all this, the load dispatch center, the Grid India, their resources would be used up in all these important activities, which actually go towards increasing the system reliability. And even at the commission level, market surveillance, we have not been able to do the activities which Mr. RP Singh pointed out in the remit in the EU market. All those issues, we are not really able to tackle the surveillance part. So that's important. And I'll come to the last issue on who should be the MCO. In fact, the round robin arrangement that was suggested by Grid India, it works perfectly well in Europe. All the rules are laid out. And I think in India also, there's no reason why this should work, especially once the exchange volumes go up after we implement all the reforms that I had highlighted earlier. So the reason why, I would like to say that why Grid India should not be the MCO, because a good part of the market distortions that I mentioned earlier, whether it's a price cap, whether it is HP dam, fragmentation and all that, a good part of that has occurred because of government intervention. The government has issued Section 107 directions to the commission, and or letters have gone from the ministry. And that's the reason why these things have come, and the system operator, you would be aware, is a lesser mortal as compared to the regulators, So that's one big reason, I am not, the other issues which other speakers have highlighted, I have no doubt in the capability of Grid India to be the MCO, the technical capability, the IT infrastructure, the other, consultative process which is usually adopted. I have no doubt on those issues, but on this single reason alone, which I have mentioned, that Grid India should not be the MCO, because the government intervention, we have to insulate the market clearing algorithm from the government interference. So that's it's very difficult to say these things, formally. But I thought this webinar is there. I thought let me share this particular aspect also. And let me also take you back to 2007. When NTPC had filed a petition before the commission for setting up a power exchange. And then the commission, they learned that Power Grid would also have a stake in that exchange. So the commission, through its order dated 6th November 2007, it barred Power Grid, by virtue of being the CTU and operator of RLDCs, from having any stake in the exchange. So, so this is also an important point which we need to keep in mind. So summarizing, so market coupling is a good to have reform, and actions must start on all the issues highlighted by Grid India, such as uniform bid structure, pre-processing of bids, post-processing of optimization output, encryption of bids, and so on, besides revamping IT infrastructure and cyber security. So all that can be done whether we have market coupling or not. And then once 2 to 3 years down the line, if you are able to implement the other big ticket reforms like capacity market and depth of the energy market and congestion management, market coupling can follow, logically. Because after all, the market coupling algorithm also will need to have a base, all these issues like how the bids would be structured and all that. The algorithm requires a convergence on all the issues, and then only we can. So I think, of course, Mr. R.P. Singh mentioned, it's one thing to do a pilot study and the other thing to actually operate in an industry grade near real time, system. So that would require a lot of time. You can't do something in 3 months or 6 months. That's wishful thinking. So I'll stop there. I would like to thank IEF once again for having me on this webinar and look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narasimhan, for giving the perspective of the grid controller and giving very good suggestions and explaining why Grid India should not be the MCO. Now floor is open for question answers. I received a request from Mr. Arun Goel, former member CRC. Mr. Arun Goel.
Thank you. I think it was very, very illuminating discussion, and having been part of, this power exchange, this power market regulations, they were framed in 2021. So here just I would like to point it, I'll be very, very brief because so much has been talked about and also we are running out of time. So at that time when the regulations were being made for market coupling operator. So these all provisions were kept. And at that time, I had just joined the commission, and I was the one who was actually against the market coupling. And I thought that, the competition should prevail. And that is why, it was said that we will keep the provision, but then that rider was put that it will come into effect through separate regulation and then when the commission decides. Now, I mean, it's been 5 years after that, and I've been part of the sector, and my views have changed over a period of time. I will tell you why. Now, you see, the main reason is we should see how the DAM and RTM works. There is a specific window given to you, and you get all the bids from the buyers and sellers, and then the market is cleared. Now, in the present scenario, over say last 5 years, or even say before that, we have seen that other exchanges are not able to make a breakthrough. Now, I'll talk about this DAM and RTM separately, but you see other issues. I mean, TAM, the share of IEX is only 35%. I'm talking of figures 24, 25 because they are publicly available. GTAM, the share of IEX is only 25%. In HP TAM, the share of IEX is only 2%. Now, the issue is the way those markets work. The price settlement is instantaneously, and they are able to compete. Whereas now in DAM and RTM, that window is available, and for whatever reason, one exchange has share of 98, 99%. Now you just imagine I am a distribution company, or even a say open access consumer, or even a private consumer. I want to buy power. Now, if I go to say other exchange other than IEX, firstly, I am not sure about whether my bid will be cleared, because even the sellers are not going to the other exchanges, and whether I get the price. And even if I get the price, whether it will be lower than or the higher than the IEX. Now, just whatever the figures are available now, in the DAM, in the 24-25, the price cleared on average in IEX was 4.25, whereas in PXIL it was 9.81 and 9.78. Now, actually, anyway, they are very, very, minor kind of transaction that have taken place. And that is the very reason that when you did the shadow exercise, so no visible gains would come, because it's a simple mathematics that the 99% is already there. So whatever 1% you add to it, it's not going to make much difference. So I think the one thing in the whole discourse that has not been discussed, and even I think CRC also in their orders, they have not discussed this issue, is the way DAM and RTM are structured. So in that, bid clearing mechanism, it's just not possible for other people to make the inroads. And why? Other exchanges are able to make inroads in other segments. That's very clear because of the structure, the way DAM and this RTM works. So, this is the major point I want to, and then I think it is for us to see whether a private player can continue to be a monopoly in this kind of a scenario. And as it was pointed out uh, uh, earlier by Mr. Joshi, the margins are very high. Investment you have made once, you garner a lot of profit. Whether those kind of profits can be allowed to a private player for so long. So the major my point is this, and that comparison that is made between NSC and BSC, Ola and Uber, so that is totally irrelevant for the way RTM and DAM are structured. So here you get the bids. You have a window. Now you imagine I am a distribution company. If somehow like other exchange is able to convince me that I should come to them, I go over there, and the clearing price is say twice what is cleared in the IEX. So I can always be questioned by my say auditors and others that why I did not go to the IEX. I think that is the one major point, that why there is a need for market coupling. Now these two things are totally separate, whether firstly we want market coupling or who should be the market coupling operator. So I think those two things we should deal them separately. Of course, in the earlier order of the CRC, they said that market coupling operator would be by rotation, but subsequently in this regulation amendment they have made, so they have suggested that it should be with Grid India. I think that is separate, but on the issue whether market coupling should be there or not, so personally I feel that for the reasons I have stated, so there is a need for market coupling. Otherwise, we'll continue to see a monopoly of the IEX, and I think it's nowhere you can see that a private operator having 99% share in a market. So that's it. I thought I'll be very, very brief.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal. Mr. Anirudh Prasad, who is joining from Nepal, he wants to raise a question. Mr. Anirudh Prasad, Mr. Saurav Mandal, and Mr. Sumit Kumar, any of them? I think they are not coming. Razdan sir,
Anil
you want to
Razdan
say?
wants to speak.
Yes, sir.
Anil Razdan
Razdan
wants to
sir,
speak.
Razdan
Anil.
sir.
Hello.
Hi, Rakesh ji. Rakesh ji,
Haji,
an excellent discussion. I can only say that it's extremely timely. In 2008, when I was secretary, we discovered that Power Grid owned and operated the transmission system as a CTU and also as an operator. We thought that was not acceptable. So we came around to this separation. But now I think the time has come for a further separation of the system operator from the financial aspect of the carriage and content. And electricity has to go to the demand centers and consumers in a transparent manner and a most economic manner. But I think given our democracy and the federal structure, it is only appropriate that a commission is set up, open to public hearing to make its recommendations to the Government of India and ease the creation of a third agency now, which will be handling these financial bids and transactions in a very transparent manner without any conflict of interest of carriage, content, or I would say operation. So I think it's extremely timely and excellent presentations, which I think almost amount to a recommendation to a commission. Thank you very much for a very enriching discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Anirudh Prasad, you have come on the line. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Good afternoon, everyone.
You're
I have to
talking
sign
from
off.
Nepal?
Yes, sir. I am from Nepal. I am a learner, sir. I have learned a lot of things. I am just a learner. I have no question to ask. I have learned a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mandal or Mr. Sumit Kumar, any one of them want to ask any question? Okay. So if there are no other questions, may I now request Mr. Shahi to give his concluding remarks.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think it has been a very learning exercise. The presentation made by RP Singh, as usual. I have heard him earlier also, very extensive study and very nice articulation. On this subject also, he made a very good preparation. One thing is coming up very clearly. I raised that issue of fundamental that we separated the function of load dispatch, National Load Dispatch Center, Regional Load Dispatch Center, and it's quite language is very clear. I still hold on to that provided that National Load Dispatch Center shall not engage in the business of trading in electricity. This is trading in electricity. In the business of trading in electricity, it should not engage. So, letter as well as spirit. Spirit definitely. Letter we can go on semantic and here and there, but definitely it is a problem. But in any case, even RP Singh made his point that there are various issues where conflict of interest is a relevant point. That is one important point that is emerging between these transactions and also the operations and responsibilities. He gave some details, the information that is available, and their road congestion and rest of the things. So there are issues of conflict of interest. More importantly, he gave a long list of risk factors that will emerge. And risk factors that might explode into serious compliance issues, controversial issues, and therefore one has to be very careful. every speaker has brought out that finally what we are talking about a small portion of the overall market. And for that, we are going to carry all these burdens of these risks. So you have to be very careful. Even if this has to be done, time is not mature. A lot of more preparations will have to be done to test whether things will be okay, will not be okay. You have seen even before it's formally coming into any realistic implementation stage, the regulatory commission went into a controversy, a serious controversy. SEBI came into picture. So therefore, if such risk factors on finance, as Anil Rajan just made a point that financial things and operating part responsibility, one will have to look into. So I think firstly, whether coupling should be done or not. A point was made by Mr. Goyal. This point was raised even in the advisory committee, as I mentioned, that PX was asked, what is it that discriminates you against the other? One has to look into that what services they provide, what type of electronic they have, what type of computation technology they are using. Why is it that clients will not go to them? Why is it that client services are not being done? Those are the issues. So I think by and large, all the speakers and the question answer comes to a point that you need to do a lot of preparations. We need also to, I am seriously saying that we need also to examine legally whether this job belongs to them. Definitely, legally. Suppose we come to the conclusion, yes, it does. Then also, how are we going to handle all those likely risk factors that might emerge just because we are doing it? If for our satisfaction we wish to do for this small fraction of the market, we can do it, but should we have that sort of a desire? Or there are several other issues where regulatory interventions are required, have been wanted for years together. Open access itself could have given you a long range of market expansion. 1 megawatt and below rural electricity, power generation, transmission, distribution is opened up in the Electricity Act. No license is required. A market evolves. Those are the things which have not been implemented, a large number of areas which have not been implemented. But coming to this particular market coupling, I think, if anything, time is not ripe for implementation. If at all it is concluded that something like this has to be done, we need to do a lot more preparations, a lot more consultations. If and when we do it, or even for that, we need that sort of a thing. I think basically this is loud and clear, all the speakers that they have brought out, a lot of preparations are required. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shai Saab. So may I now request Mr. S.M. Mahajan, Secretary General, to propose a vote of thanks.
I think everybody must be getting a spoonful glare from the better half now because it's already past 1 and they must be waiting for the lunch. So I will not take much time. I would like to thank on behalf of the India Energy Forum all the very, very knowledgeable speakers who made this nascent topic of market coupling very interesting. They have shown a great grasp of the subject. Various pros and cons at this point have been brought out. So I would like to thank all of them in sharing their knowledge and information on this subject and making presentations and discussions very, very interesting. By and large, we have maintained the time, and I would only share some information with those present here that we will be having. This was a very successful webinar, almost 130 participants, and all. I think 12 presentations, they were attentive and present. And I hope this type of participation will remain and will continue in our future programs also. Just to share with you, on 22nd of this month, we will be having webinar on battery storage system with specific reference to iron air batteries being organized by our power vertical under Shri Achal Bajaj. Yeah, the information will come here. I would request all of you to join and enrich the discussions through your knowledge and experience. Thank you very much for sitting through the entire program and making it very, very lively. Thank you very much. We need your support continuously. Thank you.
We should
you.
thank
Thank you.
Rakesh. Rakesh is a well-organized program. Your preparation, your concept note, and the attendance that has been very, and in a short notice. The subject is so important. Thank you very much, Rakesh.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.